Hi, everybody. This is Lee, and I'm talking about Betsy DeVos, Donald Trump's pick for Secretary of Education. She has her hearing on January 18th, which is Wednesday, and she'll be facing a full panel of people with questions for her. There are some people who will not be maybe in the room, but they still have questions for Betsy DeVos, and they've been submitting those via Twitter. This is an article at Common Dreams. Worried this billionaire will destroy public education. Teachers have some questions for Betsy. This is by Lauren McCauley. She's a staff writer. And so the American Federation of Teachers wants the Senate to ask billionaire heiress Betsy DeVos, determined foe of public education, and that's in quotes. What qualifications do you have for the job? And so I've spoken to Betsy DeVos previously, women of the Trump administration. I singled her out as a concern. And then I spoke of her again, saying that there seems to be a lot of controversy and pushback and pressure building against her. I don't know if that will stop her confirmation, but she's become a flashpoint that maybe people didn't expect, but she is. And I suggested Condoleezza Rice. If there was a problem with her confirmation, that someone needs to make a phone call to Condoleezza Rice. And I suggested her for education because she is the daughter of teachers. She's got to focus on Black excellence in education. She has a track record of teaching at the higher education level at Stanford University prior to her tenure in Washington under the Bush administration. It would be a lateral move for her. She's returned back to Stanford. And so she came back to Washington, D.C. Since she was the Secretary of State, going to Secretary of Education would be a lateral move, similar to the move that Elaine Chao made from Secretary of Transportation to, no, from Secretary of Labor to Secretary of Transportation. And so I brought that up on my channel before. People kind of said, well, she's a war hawk, and I said that too. She was a war hawk. She was part of some unfortunate decision making when it came to overseas foreign policy, military, use of our military. And so that would be her baggage. The fact that these are part of the public record of Condoleezza Rice. Although, as Secretary of Education, she would not be in charge of foreign policy, she would be in charge of domestic policy, specifically education. Rex Tillerson is being pushed for Secretary of State, and that's a whole other video right there too. But I like Condoleezza for education because I sense that she actually cares about education, having been raised by educators, having worked as an educator, and having a track record as an educator. She is for vouchers and charter schools and privatization, but she doesn't seem as greedy and thirsty, we'll say, as the impression that people are getting from Betsy DeVos, and that's the difference. Also, that I don't think Condoleezza Rice would be very difficult to actually confirm. Again, since she wouldn't be working with foreign policy, it might not be an issue, or it might not be used against her the choices that she made. I think. But anyway, there's this article, and it looks like Betsy DeVos is being targeted because she has no relevant experience in education, according to the American Federation of Teachers. And this is Randy Weingarten, president of AFT. He wrote that in an email to supporters. She has no relevant experience in public education. She's a billionaire with an agenda. and she's promoted disastrous ideology and destructive policies across her home state of Michigan. She's worked to undermine, defund, and privatize public schools, expand for-profit charters without accountability, and push unconstitutional private school vouchers. So Weingart is saying they need a Secretary of Education who would strengthen and improve public schools, not one who is actually out to destroy public schools. And so she's Randy Weingarten saying that there's many questions that need to be answered. And starting with 90% of kids attend public school, an area you have no experience in. What qualifications do you have for the job? The other questions follow. What steps are you taking to make sure your investments won't pose a conflict of interest for you at the Department of Ed? The policies that you help enact have led to atrocious conditions in Detroit. What do you tell those parents and kids? What do you believe your role and the role of the Department of Ed is to ensure the free exchange of ideas on campus? Will you push expansion of unregulated for-profit charters on the national level, as you did in Michigan, despite dismal results? Do you plan to pursue a voucher program at the national level, despite the fact that voters have rejected such initiatives? Can you share examples from your work where you held charter schools to high standards and strong accountability? How would you support schools' efforts to attract educators and retain them to become a committed part of a school? How will you enforce Title IX to ensure women have equal access and to support survival? Let me read that again. How will you enforce Title IX to ensure women have equal access and to support survivors of campus sexual assault? And so they also point to DeVos's record as a hardened anti-LGBTQ crusader. That's how it's been put at Huffington Post. As Secretary of Education, what is the department's role in protecting LGBT students? And so there's more. They're asking, like, how are you going to ensure that special needs students are protected if public funds are diverted to charter schools? As someone who hates public schools, why are you taking over a position that promotes them? Do you continue to own any investments in for-profit education companies? Will you commit to revoking federal funding for universities that repeatedly violate students' constitutional rights? As some charter schools have shut down without notice, given your anti-public school stance, how will you guarantee public education for all? Have you ever attended a public school board meeting? Is it fair that 44 million Americans who want to better themselves communities have to take on student debt to do so? And so last week the Health Education Committee, they were forced to delay the DeVos hearing because there were so many concerns over her financial entanglements and conflicts of interest. And so there's also concerns about how the DeVos family used its massive wealth to advance a very strong, staunch Christian conservative agenda in Michigan and beyond. And so they say that there's a concern with the separation of church and state in terms of public education with Betsy DeVos. And they're saying that she is not a normal candidate for Secretary of State. And this is actually the public education advocate and former assistant Secretary of Education under George H.W. Bush, who's asking this question or saying this. This is the former Assistant Secretary of Education under George H.W. Bush. She's not a normal candidate for Secretary of Education. She is a religious zealot and a radical extremist. She will speak of her admiration for all successful schools, including public schools, but don't believe it. She is a determined foe of public education. And so it kind of indicates the rightward drift of certain elements of our nation. The fact that there are people under the first Bush administration who just say this is just a step too far. Definitely. And it's kind of similar to Jeff Sessions, where, it's just people under the previous Republican administrations seem to the left of the current state of the Republican Party now. And Betsy DeVos has become a flashpoint. And I believe that she is an heiress of the Amway in conglomerate. Yeah, some people call that a pyramid scheme, Amway, and that she's an heiress. She inherited her wealth, and she's got a background promoting fundamentalist conservative Christian ideology. Also, she's highly favored towards privatization of public schools and making them for-profit centers. And so I also have concerns. I mean, her track record doesn't seem to be good in Michigan. And now there's this effort to promote her based on that for whatever reason, so she can have greater control over national education policy. And it looks like kind of strange how that's going. But again, that's why I prefer Condoleezza Rice. She's a war hawk. She was a war hawk underneath the second Bush administration. Some decision making there was not ideal. There's questions about that. But if she was promoted for Secretary of Education, she wouldn't be working with foreign policy. She would be working with domestic policy in a field in which she has a track record. She has experience. She has a great reputation. She has been a teacher. She understands the field. I'll try to find the article that I posted in a previous video so people can read through her points of view and see what they think. And maybe it's not up to us. Of course, it's up to Donald Trump and the Senate. But I think we can do better than Betsy DeVos. Definitely, it looks like she's a disaster. I mean, I was trying to be optimistic, but it doesn't look good. I prefer Condoleezza Rice. Maybe Condoleezza's not really interested. I don't even know if people asked her. And if they did ask her, the answer would be, no, thank you. But I think we can definitely find someone else, if necessary or if needed, than Betsy DeVos. Good luck.